It's Week 12. The Detroit Lions now find themselves fighting back into the NFC playoff picture. At 6-4, they'll face a New York Giants team who have been struggling. 2-9 have lost their last 5. They are chaotic, they're scrappy, and they love to ruin someone else's season. Welcome back to the channel. I am your host, Johnny Gaz. Thank you for returning for another video. This will be my Week 12 game preview. Detroit Lions, New York Giants. We'll go through the headlines and injury updates. I'll tell you those key matchups and some potential X factors. I'll tell you what the difference in the game will be, and at the end of the video, I will give you my final score and prediction. Let's go.
Takes it to the Philadelphia 40. Fake to Gibbs. And in the middle, Jameson Williams on the run. Not going to get him. Touchdown. And this is where the penalty comes from with Williams and the celebration.
Let's start with the headlines. Kicking it off on the Detroit side. They are coming off of their worst offensive performance of the season, only 9 points against the Philadelphia Eagles. In the previous matchup against the Washington Commanders, they had 44 points and were averaging over 31 points on the season. Quarterback Jared Goff, his worst performance of 2025. A lot of that due to the interior offensive line issues they had in protecting Jared Goff against that vaunted Eagles defensive front. For injury news, Sam Laporta unfortunately was placed on injured reserve. He missed last week against the Eagles, and he is expected to miss at least the next 3 weeks while he's on IR, and they will continue to monitor his back injury after that point. Lions offense really missing Sam Laporta as their security blanket. In turn, will look to get rookie Isaac Tesla involved much more. They do trust his size in his hands, and we should see him more involved against the Giants. On the opposite end, the Detroit Lions defense led by Kelvin Shepard was very good against the Philadelphia Eagles, considering the Lions offense put them in tough situations all night long. They were 0 for 5 on 4th downs against Philadelphia. Kelvin Shepard came out in support of Dan Campbell's ultra aggressiveness and really has gotten behind the idea of this Detroit defense being firefighters, in essence putting out fires constantly because of these Dan Campbell decisions. Again, full support from the coaching staff and the players, and the Lions will look to increase that efficiency on both 3rd and 4th downs. Lions have activated linebacker Malcolm Rodriguez, moving from the PUP list to the active roster, and you should now start to see him work in rotational snaps at linebacker and especially on special teams. Another positive note, the Lions may get back cornerback DJ Reed this week against the Giants. He's been out for several weeks with a hamstring injury, but has now worked himself back in and may be available for the Lions defensive secondary in Week 12.
Robinson in motion. Give it to Singletary. On the cut. Penetrates and scores. What an opening drive for the Giants behind Jameis and company.
For the Giants, they're coming off the most recent loss in Week 11 against the Green Bay Packers, 27-20. And although they sit at 2-9, they have played several teams very close this season. I think the biggest story this week is the potential return of young quarterback Jackson Dart, who had been out under concussion protocol, but he's returned to practice this week, and the team is optimistic that he will play against the Lions in Week 12. If he cannot go, they will go back to veteran quarterback Jameson Winston, who had gotten the start in Week 11. For the Giants offensively, with the injuries at quarterback, they have not been consistent. They've been without their starting running back and their most dynamic wide receiver pretty much all season. So points have been hard to come by for this Giants offense. Defensively, they still hold their hat on their defensive front. They can get after the quarterback and can cause some problems for this Lions offensive line. On the opposite end, they still give up a ton of points. Over the last 5 games, they've averaged over 24 plus points given up defensively, and that is bottom tier in the NFL. Now let's talk about the key matchups. Giants head to Ford Field to face Detroit in Week 12. The first one to look at is the Giants' rush attack against the Lions' run defense. For the Giants, they want to shorten the game. They want to hide their quarterback. To do so, they got to run the football. The Lions against Philadelphia and Saquon Barkley, they held him to 3.2 yards per carry, and on the season are allowing just 4 yards per carry. If the Lions are able to hold down the Giants' rush attack, that makes them very one-dimensional, and a one-dimensional Giants team is ugly. This matchup truly favors the Lions, but if the Giants are able to get anything going on the ground, it could open up things offensively for them to hold in there in Week 12. Another key matchup to look out for is the Lions secondary versus whoever the starting quarterback is for the Giants and their offensive weapons. Whether Jackson Dart or Jameis Winston, their offensive production has been limited. For the Lions last week against Jalen Hurts, they held him to only 135 passing yards. Now, there was a weather factor there, but both A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith didn't get chunk plays. For the Giants, without Malik Nabers, their most dynamic wide receiver, and without their best running back, they've really had issues pushing the ball down the field. With the potential return of DJ Reed and with the defensive coordinator Calvin Shepard challenging the cornerback room to support the running game more, the Lions have an opportunity to dominate this matchup. Another big matchup in this one will be the Lions' rush attack against this Giants' run defense, and that's really been their biggest weakness so far in 2025. Now, the Lions have struggled in their run game. It's been up and down over the last several weeks, but with Jahmyr Gibbs, he is always a home run threat. And between Sonic and Knuckles, Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, they're going to want to get back to the bread and butter of what they do best, and that typically is their run game. The offensive line to kind of rebuild and reshape, kind of recoup from what they were in Week 11, are going to want to get to pounding the rock here in Week 12, and I think that's going to lend itself to the Lions' rush attack, and that really may be the biggest matchup here in Week 12. The biggest key matchup in Week 12, Lions and Giants, has to be the Lions' offensive line versus the Giants' pass rush, and this is really the entire ball game for Detroit. The Giants can still get after it. Their defensive front can put pressure on. They're quick, they're bendy, and they're explosive. For the Lions last week against Philadelphia, they were not able to protect Jared Goff, especially on the interior of the offensive line. It's been proven that Jared Goff can be one of the best quarterbacks in the league when clean, but one of the worst when under heavy pressure. So if the Lions can get back to protecting their quarterback, they might be able to restabilize this and look like the offense looked back in Washington. Now let's talk about some potential X factors in this matchup, Lions and Giants. Let's start on the Lions side, and rather than me giving you the obvious ones that I give you every week, Jahmyr Gibbs on the offense, Aiden Hutchinson on the defense, let's mix it up a little bit. For the offense, let's take a look at rookie wide receiver Isaac Tesla. Now this week, a lot of the Lions coaching staff has come out and said they'd love to work him in more, especially with tight end Sam Laporta being out of the lineup for the next several weeks, if not more. They need to find a bigger body option over the middle of the field to give Jared Goff a security blanket. I believe that Isaac Tesla can be that big body. They like his physical abilities. They like his hands. He just needs more opportunities. Defensively, let's get back to the Lions' defensive line, and a guy we haven't heard from in several weeks, but I think will make an impact against the Giants and their rushing attack, and that's defensive tackle Aleem McNeil. When he returned to the lineup, he was an X factor right off the bat, but it feels like for the past several weeks, he's sort of disappeared. Now, I'm sure that has a lot to do with the Lions' heavier rotation on their defensive line, but I think against the Giants, knowing that they're going to have to run the football to be effective offensively, a guy like Aleem McNeil could be a game breaker. And for the Giants' X factors, I'm going to go back to more of the obvious. I think no matter who starts at quarterback, that has to be the X factor. And it would be more beneficial if Jackson Dart is able to go in this matchup. If he's cleared, his mobility, both passing and running, gives the Giants their best shot. His energy and dynamic play could spark something for this Giants offense. On the defense, we sort of touched on it in our key matchups. This Giants pass rush has to get after Detroit quarterback Jared Goff. For them to have a chance to win, they have to be effective in what they do across their defensive line. And Brian Burns, he is their best defensive player this season and will have a lot of opportunity against this struggling Lions offensive line to be a difference maker.
I wasn't second guessing. I said I'd be surprised if they didn't punt it. So,
to these officials and to his defense too. Calvin Shepard's defense, you said it all night.
He's been very.
The difference in this Week 12 game, Detroit Lions and New York Giants, comes down to two things. One is the run game mismatch. I really believe that the Lions offensive line, looking to get back on track versus one of the worst run defenses in the entire NFL, just seems to align perfectly here for this Week 12 game and gives Detroit the biggest advantage. The other thing is the momentum and everything going with both of these teams. Detroit has to get a win to put themselves back in NFC playoff contention, and if they have any dreams for a high seed, they have to beat the Giants here in Week 12. On the opposite end, the Giants are just looking for respect and are really playing for draft positioning. So to me, those two key factors make the difference and give Detroit the edge in Week 12. The New York Giants have really struggled in 2025, so much so that they fired their head coach. Now with Mike Kafka at the helm, they played a little bit more aggressive and even looser against the Green Bay Packers. But will that play style relate to more wins? Ultimately, for Week 12, I think the Lions have the leg up. They're going to be more motivated. They really need this victory to hang in there in the NFC playoff race. They want to ensure that their offensive line can get back to protecting the quarterback. And more than anything, they're going to want to run the football and control the clock. Defensively, I think they can hold the Giants' run game down and get after the quarterback. They're even getting healthier in their back end, so they really should have an advantage. Because of all of those factors, I have the Lions winning big in Week 12 by the score of 33-20. That would bring the Lions to 7-4 and would drop the Giants to 2-10. That's going to do it for my fully loaded Week 12 game preview. Let me know in the comments below, who do you have in this matchup? Lions or Giants, and what will that final score be? If you dig what we're doing here at Johnny Gas Sports, make sure to hit that like button. It's the best way to help out the channel, and I'd love it if you consider subscribing. We're on the road to 4,000 now, thanks to all of you guys. If you hit the notify bell, you won't miss any future videos. There is a membership option available. That's where I do game highlights, reactions, and a ton of other fun stuff. But if you search for @JohnnyGasSports on any social media, you will find fun and reliable Detroit Lions content. More than anything else, take care of yourself and that mental health. It's so important. I want to make sure you come back and see me on future videos. I hope you guys have a fantastic weekend ahead. Enjoy Week 12. Go Lions.